entrepreneur is a disease. Being an entrepreneur, at least for me, it's been a really messed up focus. I don't think the people are choosing to do it by choice, but they're falling into a trap that it looks kind of sexy from the outside, but it's really not feeding the soul.
Right. It's easy to cast judgment and say, man, you're just standing on the Bible to get sales, or you're doing this completely wrong, or you're a phony. As if we don't allow ourselves to kind of humble ourselves, put the ego aside and say, hey man, I see what you're trying to do. Let me walk with you through this the correct way.
Because my identity was the business owner who everybody loved and needed. I cut that off and realized, wow, all my friends were tied to the benefits they got from me. So there weren't real deep friendships there. I had to stop and what is going on in my life right now?
I like these conversations to be as raw and organic as possible. It's a couple people hanging out, just sharing some life together. So
that's awesome.
I fully encourage you asking me as many questions as you have. I like that part.
Yeah, I think dual discovery is always more intriguing, right? So yeah,
100%.
Very cool.
And I will say, in the brief amount of research that I was doing, I stumbled on your Facebook page, and I will mention to you that when I looked at your description of who you are, I appreciated the order in which you listed the items.
Yeah.
Right. So
intentional. Yes.
Yeah. And I forget the exact description there, but it was essentially, your respect and appreciation for God, your wife, your kids, and your business. And kind of putting it in that order, which is really hard for some people to kind of figure out. So I was happy to see that you got that unlock.
Well, at age 52, you do it wrong long enough, and have to hit the restart button or the remind yourself button, or someone else does it for you. Over time, it's that bio or talking about it often is a really good tool, has been a really good tool for me to kind of keep things front and center. Entrepreneur is a disease, being an entrepreneur. And I think way too often, at least for me, it's been a really messed up focus. And if I do that, it's I have to reset a business. I have to reset friendships and alignment. And so keeping that alignment in front of my face daily and being accountable to it, that accountability, if you put it out there and people know that, when they talk to you, they're going to find out, are you authentic or not? And that's really important to me. So thanks for noticing.
Yeah, man. Thanks for living it out. I love how you say that, it's important to put it out there for the accountability part, because I appreciate it. But I do feel like there's a lot of people who will say that for the sake of saying it, but not worry about living it out behind the scenes. So I'm kind of curious your perspective on where you see that happening, and the people who say things for the sake of pretending to be a different version of themselves, and then behind the scenes they're living out something totally different.
Yeah, I might go hard on this one. It's been something that I have really spent a lot of time thinking about over the last year, but even more tightly over the last 3 months of my life, especially in the circles I run in. I think it's cool for a lot of people to say, God is first in my life. And they've found that it just feels like it's been a tool for many. And that really doesn't work with me. It's really hard for me. And I'm working on the judgmental part, but there seems to be this, at least like I said, in the circles I'm in, the way to success is God. And so that's what I need to talk about and profess, but it's being used as a tool for a specific outcome. This is the way it comes off to me. They're not living the life. They're involved in communities where it stays very surface level leadership type, motivational, level of information. even that level of like gospel or what the teachings are. It's just to make everybody feel good. And that at this point in my life, it just kind of repulses me. And I'm trying to figure out that fine line between loving someone without that judgment. To be honest, I mean, to be really honest, it's been really difficult for me because I've fallen into that over time, and it's deceptive. I don't think the people are choosing to do it by choice, but they're falling into a trap that it looks kind of sexy from the outside. But it's really not feeding the soul. So,
yeah. And I wonder if part of that is like this, again, really nuanced line where, hey, if the way to success is through your relationship with God, right? And I believe that to be true, the closer that you are honoring and following and have that relationship, the more fruitful it is, across the board.
yeah.
So that part is true, at least in my perspective. And I think you'd agree. I think the hard part is, when you get someone who's maybe a little bit new in their faith walk and they see that, they think they can just mimic hey, let me just proclaim it and let me throw a gospel verse and everything.
Yep.
And that's kind of the approach that they take. And I think the hard part too is, you don't want to push them away from that. You don't want to say, hey, no, you shouldn't be doing that. But kind of walking alongside them to give them that non-judgmental guidance that I think we don't see enough of, right? It's easy to cast judgment and say, man, you're just standing on the Bible to get sales, or you're doing this completely wrong, or you're a phony. But then what do, right? Where do they actually get the example of followable excellence if we don't allow ourselves to kind of humble ourselves, put the ego aside and say, hey, man, I see what you're trying to do. Let me walk with you through this the correct way.
That's really good. And the way you said that is really eloquent and true. And I think that's the battle, right? Especially when you don't have like a really amazing relationship with that person. It's more surface level. And you're watching, for me, I'm watching going, I think there's misalignment here, but I also have seen, so in my circle, there's groups who are kind of all following the same leaders and are in the same group. So they're all feeding themselves. And so in that situation where I'm not like spending shoulder to shoulder time with them, it's more of like this social influence through social media, is one, praying for them, and then being an example. One, making it clear that my life is Christ focused, Christ centered, through just actions and what we say, actions more importantly, and just hope that it kind of comes off. I think I was going down that wrong road. I've been a believer my whole life. I was raised in a Christian home, but I was going down that wrong road because I did have massive success and I was following that quotient. And it took me a while to separate those things. Like, sure, I'm successful, and sure, there's some pieces of, I mean, it's important to be in alignment with God and to follow God and for that to be your number one thing. And that will absolutely influence your success. That's what I believe. But it's really easy to get pulled too far down that road. I don't know if I'm being clear, but
yeah,
it's just something I spend a lot of time thinking about. And again, you said what you said is kind of calling me out for that judgmental eye, because that judgmental thing, I keep finding myself there, and it's a desire. It's like a deep desire. I want to save people. I've always wanted to let me help you speed through this part of your life. And a lot of people just aren't ready for that.
Yeah. Well, I think too, there's that big part about the intentionality of it, right? Because we want people to be deep in faith, but for the right reason, right? Mm-hmm. It's not, hey, I want to put God first on my social media bio so people believe me and I can attract some Christian customers.
Right.
Because I'm sure you've seen that plenty of times.
Yeah.
But, we don't want to shun the person from saying God first. We want to say, hey, let's do it for the right intention. So I think the intentionality there is really important.
Yeah.
But, to your point, I really think it's for us to be able to walk in that and kind of give them that example that's not judgmental, but that's really hard. And, to what you were saying before about the success aspect, I'd love if you can share a little bit of your early success story, maybe kind of before you've had these revelations or what that looked like, just to kind of understand the entire evolution of how you got here.
Yeah, that's a pretty deep question. I wouldn't say early success. I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years, and the journey of my different businesses and focuses is what brought me to a new level of my belief. So, you can be raised in a Christian home, go on all the mission trips, do all the things, and still kind of live surface level. And I've been in and out of that, and I think that's just pretty normal. But as a middle-aged adult, as I kind of carved through career and then focus on the real pull away from me was my first business. It was the pull away for me from um, my belief. Sure, I went to church, I said the right things, but it wasn't my focus. But it also pulled me away from being a husband and a father first, as opposed to business in the name of my family needs my provision. And so I'm doing this for them, and realizing I had to shut that business down. I literally shut that business down. I've told this story many times. Took on $250,000 of debt in 2008, 2010, overnight. Just we decided not to file bankruptcy. We had the business sold. The guy on the way to sign the papers called me and said, I changed my mind. And that was that. It was done. I didn't sell any inventory. I was just sitting there with a turnkey store for him, a successful business. And I looked at my wife and I said, you know, I told you I was going to sell this, because I came home one night after working. It was like 9 o'clock at night. The house was dark. I have two young boys who were both born during the first business build. And I came home one night at 9, dark room, dinner table set, but everyone's asleep. And that was a little bit of what I call a Mack truck moment, where God, drove this right into my face. Like, look at what you've done. And so I made a commitment to her right after that. I had a very straight up conversation with her that I realized that I had been focusing on the wrong things, and decided to sell it. I was a full-time educator at the time as well, so we had that to fall back on. But I decided to sell it for my family, not my faith or my belief. I was out of alignment with my family, and that fell through. So I promised my wife we were moving on. So I just basically took on all the debt for all of the product coming in, the pre-orders for that business. You have to pre-order the product, the seasonal product. And it took us years and years and years to pay that off. But what happened next was I now was without identity, because my identity was the business owner who everybody loved and needed. It was a bike shop, so I would take people on bike rides all weekend. I was carting people around. We were doing, people from out of the state, out of the country would come, and we would do the thing with them. And that was what was first for me. And so I cut that off and realized, well, all my friends were tied to the benefits they got from me. So there weren't real deep friendships there. So that fell apart. I didn't know how to be a father. And now I'm thrust right back into all this time with my wife and boys. And I was lost there. Through that I went into a lot of depression, which eventually was like, I had to stop and what is going on in my life right now? And that's when I started to learn, not my identity as a business owner or a teacher at that point, or a father or a husband. My identity as Christ is unmovable. All the others are moving targets. They can go away at any moment. Wife can leave you, die, kids can die, step out of your life, business, money, all of that can go away. So that was a transition back in 2012, 2013, and continued on and over time got more and more and more solidified in that belief system. But I would continually, as I built new businesses, continually find my way back into work or pursuing money, then wife and kids. and then everything else, right? And so it's been a constant battle. But in 2021, I would do these prayer walks every single morning. I still do. They're 45 minutes long, and they're just gratitude and prayer. And I was just really upset with God because I was at an income ceiling, but I was focusing so much on living my life in the order, what I'd call my values ladder, where my values are and what's top and what's bottom. And I was just really frustrated. And I remember just kind of like calling out to him, like, this is stupid. I'm doing what you tell me to do. I'm doing what I'm called to do. I'm focusing my life on you, and yet I'm stuck. And I just had a God moment. Basically it was like, you're holding on to everything and trying to control everything story in my life. And until that's not what you're doing, you're going to stay there. And, things started to change really fast at that point. That was definitely, in my opinion, the Holy Spirit really working in me to overcome some long-standing poverty mindset and belief mindset. The poverty mindset forcing me to always shift back to a focus on money and work really hard. So that was the big, big, big shift. And everything started to move in a different direction from then. And it's just been a climb since then. And pretty much a climb until last year. Last year was a really big struggle, but coming out of last year, some medical things and some family things, that's where I've started to see a differentiation where we started our conversation of the real life of following Christ versus the image and the doing it for the benefits. Not probably a lot of people don't knowingly doing that. They're just immature in their walk. So yeah. I hope I answered your question.
You did. No, you definitely did. And I appreciate you sharing that story. It is a powerful one. And I think a lot of people resonate with that experience of like chasing your definition of success and the things that you can control. And I want to go back to one of the first things you said there was you said you've been an entrepreneur for about 20 years. When you said that, my immediate thought was you've been an entrepreneur since birth. Like you don't just become an entrepreneur. Maybe you've been a business owner for 20 years.
That's very true.
But you've been an entrepreneur since birth. And I believe like that was gifted to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that there are many people who are maybe operating in this definition that they built for themselves of, hey, this is who I'm supposed to be. This is how I am supposed to show up because I want to control these situations. But I think it's when you free yourself of those self-given definitions and get back to how you were put on this earth to operate, which is a really scary thing because it feels like it's out of your control, right? You want to have some ownership over the process. You want to say, hey, I'm the one in the driver's seat. I'm in control of all of these things. It's up to me and my decisions. Yeah, you can pray about it, but ultimately you have to be the one to do the work. Super scary to step out of that. But, I resonate with what you said there in kind of giving up control to saying, hey, Heavenly Father, like, I understand you got me. The same relationship you'd have with your earthly dad. Like you say, hey, I might not understand what the heck I'm supposed to do, but if you tell me to go this direction, I'm just going to go. Yeah. And yes, it's super scary. The thing that I always like play back in my mind, one conversation, if you will, that I've had was when I got the word to write the check. Like I just heard the word write the check. Like, I'm good for it. What are you worried about? What is your concern? You think the check's going to bounce?
That's
like,
good.
I'm good for it. So just write the check. Like step out into it and have faith of like, hey, it's going to work out. Yes, it might not work out in the way that you initially thought in your version of the story. So yeah, you might get some mud on your face. This business you thought might be amazing for you might fail. You might be stuck with some debt. Like I'm sure we could probably talk for hours about the failures that we've had.
Yes.
But all of them have led us to right where we are right now. Mm-hmm. Which I'm going to go on a limb and say you probably agree with me. I am happier in this version of me in 2026 than I've ever been before. And I continue to fail forward, right? But it comes with giving up that control which I think is a super scary thing for a lot of people to deal with.
Yeah. Wow, there's a lot to unwrap in what you said, especially with kind of my recent journey. I have embraced the failure is only a failure if you don't use it to move forward. It's the fail forward, the fall forward, all of those things. I first heard that from John Maxwell years and years ago, 2012, I believe. The fail forward concept, and it hit me really big. It was like, oh wait. Then I kind of went through a journey of working through my own personal beliefs on myself, and kind of rewriting my own story, and realized that I had never embraced that, and by embracing it, it was incredibly powerful. These things didn't happen to me, they happened for me. And when you have that mindset of this is happening for me, even in the darkest moments, when it's almost or nearly impossible, if not impossible to see, that changes how you operate, which in turn just completely turns the tables. And being an entrepreneur from birth, yeah, I mean, I'm wired for it. I actually shared a social media post, I think last week, that about 4% of the population is are business owners, entrepreneurs, successful. It's a very, very, very small percentage. And it's interesting because the things that made me different and caused some struggles and hardships in school I look back now, I'm like, oh, wow, I totally get it. Because my mind at that point was wired a little anti-authoritarian. I'm not going to do something just because you tell me to do it because it's just how you want it done. If there needs to be a reason. And look, I'm going to create a product or a system over here that works for me because it's more efficient. That was always seen. It runs against the school system. It runs against, the standard. And I look back at all of the stories that were kind of traumatic for me. I don't try to be I don't like that word, but it's true. I mean, we all have trauma, right? So starting to rewire those is, wait, no. Those are because that's how God created me. And my response was out of alignment with what the rest of the world was in step with. And that's okay. And that was another big revelation a couple years ago, is like, I need to stop trying to be noticed in a room. I need to stop trying to be the person other people want me to be and be who I want to be. That served me really well. It's completely changed how my brain attaches who I am, and when I enter a room with people that are successful or that I would love to have as friends. It's changed how I walk into a situation that's a public place, and maybe I'm wearing completely different clothes than everyone else. It's like, they're going to like me for who I am or not. It doesn't really matter anymore. And so I've had a lot of transformation from that, but God wired me in a way where my upbringing and the giftings that I have are two-sided. And I was building things out of the wrong side of that, if you will. So last year I was a very stressful year. Like 3 ambulance rides, 3 or 4 emergency surgeries for my son, major things happening in the house. Business was really stressful. And I'm walking back to my office with my wife, and I just fall on the ground. I won't share the story in length, but I couldn't walk. I could barely talk. My brain was like there. I could think, but getting words out and making complete sentences was almost impossible. First crying. The doctors weren't able to figure out what was going on. Basically an ER visit, ambulance ride. They thought I had a stroke. That turned into months and months of freezing. Like, I'd be walking and just everything would slow down, and I'd stop and I was stuck. Start drooling. Sometimes I'd fall on the floor, couldn't talk, couldn't move, cognizant of what's going around me, but I can't do anything. Turns out it's called functional neurological disorder. Anyway, so I finally found someone who could help me with that. And he said, look, you're wired to swallow everyone else's hand grenades. So Like you're out there to please everybody and make sure everything's okay. There's a lot of background to that. Make sure everything's okay. Guess who you never pay attention to? It's yourself. So my body went into fight or flight for so long, probably my entire life, that it just kind of said, I've got to stop the software from doing what it's supposed to do to protect you, because it became to a point where every single client that was upset, every single thing that happened in my life, was my body was responding as if there were a bear standing in front of me ready to kill me. And so I went actually into what like a possum does. I just they just fall over and look dead. That's basically where my body was going. It took months and months and months to get over that. I tell you that because the way that I see the world, and that the way that I was raised, the things that happened that I could see as bad, because they were very traumatic. I didn't even remember most of these until last year, until I was, had to pay attention to it. I had washed a ton of stuff out of my head, but what happened there wired me to build businesses that provided over the top customer experience, because I was so focused on the client being happy, because that was how I was wired. So I could look at that as like, it stole 6 months of my life. I literally was inoperable. My wife was following me around because she never knew I was going to fall. She was like a 24-hour care for me. This was just months ago. And I could look at that as that happened to me. But if you look at everything over time, it's happened for me. All those things happened in a way that have created me into who I am today. I just was trying to control it all. To your point, I was trying to control it all. I was trying to be the one. I always picture a hole in a wall, really small hole in the wall, and me holding a rope and trying to get the rope through the wall, instead of, saying, hey, God, would you grab that rope and just, if you want it through that hole, would you pull it? It's really simple. You can't really force a rope in a straight line. That's kind of the vision I had, and that was my life. And so it led me to a place of being half brain dead, really. I mean, I was not at a cognitive level that was functional. And it stole a lot of time from my life and caused a lot of hurt in my family because I wasn't functional. That's an extreme, but I could look at that as a bad event, and it's taking me time, but I'm seeing it as a good event, as a wake-up call. And that's where my focus started to change from the real, authentic pursuit of Christ. Put all the other stuff away, all the if I do this, I will get this mindset. So I've had some major life things happen that have led me to a place where I've had a different outlook on my walk with Christ and what that looks like.
I love that. It's a powerful story that you share. And I think that there's a lot that can be taken from that. The first couple of things that come to mind for me are, number one, I don't think it has to be either good or bad. I think that, we can look at it as, hey, this is a thing that was bad, but also used for good. Because, there's this aspect of like toxic positivity, right? Where you have to spin everything to be good and positive, and we just ignore the bad parts. And I think it's a little easier for us at this stage in our walk and our journey to look at it and understand and accept the negative parts, but not really focus on them.
Yeah.
But if you're sort of new in this journey, you look at that like, how the heck are you able to just pretend that doesn't exist? And I think I just want to make it clear, and I'm assuming we're on the same page here. We don't ignore that fact.
No.
We accept it. We just look at the positive part. Like, we understand, hey, this is a really crappy thing. It was traumatic. It was, months of your life, painful for all the people involved. But also, hey, look at this awesome stuff that came from it. Yeah. And kind of focusing on, hey, what can I use for good? Not just let me wallow in the sorrow of whatever happened. I think the other part is now you're able to then use that for even greater good for your relationship with your kids. And you can model that, what it looks like to be a business owner, an entrepreneur, a father, a husband, someone who's able to do those things, but do it from the context of, hey, how do I show up for me first? Not in a selfish way, but right. So that I can be good for me, so I can then be good for you. And I think, had you not gotten to that point, it's really easy to fall into that hustle and grind mentality that so many business owners and entrepreneurs want to put on social media. I was guilty of it as well. Like, you want to be the hardest worker in the room. Yeah, you still do, but you have to be the hardest worker in the room at also showing up in your relationships, showing up for yourself, right? To be able to just, not solely focus on, hey, how do I grow my business and only my business to come home to an empty dining room table? Like, that part can't happen. And I think to go through that experience, to then come back and share the story here, to share the story with your family, to be able to walk that out, so that now, hey, your kids, you have 2 boys, right?
Yeah.
So they have an example of what it looks like to show up as a father, as a husband, and see what that looks like, and also be successful at whatever their endeavors are.
Yeah.
Right. And to go back to kind of what you said earlier, when we're growing up and hey, maybe in school, we don't necessarily fit into the traditional definition of what it looks like to be successful in terms of, hey, are you able to sit there in a class, concentrate and get good grades in social studies? Not really. Like, earlier on, we are defined as not great students. Okay. But we are just following maybe the wrong definition of what makes us great, right? We're applying it to the wrong thing. And I think for us now, we're able to then give that same grace to our kids and be like, hey, I'm not judging you by your ability to be awesome in social studies, unless that's your passion. Like, if you happen to suck at social studies, but you're amazing at tennis, I'm going to get you not a social studies tutor. I'm going to get you a trainer for tennis. Like, let's look at what are your skill sets. And I think it's important too, to have that conversation, be that example for your kids.
This is something I grasped on probably 2016. Really set myself into a place of several things. One, I'm going to always share the ones that I could share, my failures that I was walking through with my kids and the lesson I learned. So that was car conversations. That was something. And then also they were at that point also as middle school, young, older elementary at that point, way more open with sharing where they failed that normally we would hide. Right. And so I think entrepreneurs have a really great opportunity because we see the reflection of failure very quickly, and it's usually monetary based, and it's in your face. You can't avoid it. So develop that level of relationship with my boys and my wife, and then also being like, the lesson isn't to get A's. The lesson is, what is the effort you need to do to sharpen yourself? It's not to get the right answers. What is going to improve you? One of our core values in my company is excellence. How you do anything is how you do everything. And so a lot of people really fight me on that. Well, I don't put the toilet paper on. I'm not as serious about that as I'm like, but if you practiced when you walked into a public restroom and there's a pile of paper towels on the ground and no one else is in there, if you just started to think, if this were my home, I would do that, and you started to adapt that mindset, I'll find myself picking up stuff in bathrooms all the time. It's gross, and I hope no one catches me because I'm like, I'm going to go wash my hands. When we focus not on what the world wants, but what God wants from us in that moment, sure, we're gonna miss the mark for an A+ or a 4.0 GPA or 5 at this point in these high schools, but that's really not what matters. It's not what matters. That's the pressure the world is putting on us. That's what the world wants. What does God want out of us that moment? He wants us to continue to sharpen ourselves, to build character, to have constructive thinking so that we can argue or debate or share with others what we believe and why we believe it without feeling ashamed. And so those are the things we talk through. And of course, both my boys, my oldest is like, I'm never working for anybody else again. He's 21. He lives on his own in Montana. And then my youngest is like, I'm never working for anybody else. We'll see how that works out. But very independent, very smart, but grades weren't the focus. And that bucked the system a little bit. But again, moving back to that underlying thing is how we do anything is how we do everything. it just may not align with how the world sees it needs to be done.
Yeah.
So those are
I
lessons
love
that
that.
I felt have been really powerful in our family and then in my boys at their Bryson's 21 and Corbin's 18 now, so both basically adults. Just the way that they function and move through life with a different view. It's pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, that's awesome because it becomes normal for them. I
Yeah.
think that's the coolest part, right? And like we tend to gloss over that fact because it's really uncomfortable to be holding yourself to that standard. And I think that's where a lot of people will, find the excuse in that. And I am also a big believer in how you do one thing is how you do everything. But I think people look at that as, oh, you're being extreme, or like there's no possible way you can do all of those things. And yes, to a degree, you're not necessarily always going to live to the extreme, right? But I think it's more about the standard
And the
and having
pursuit.
a set of core values
Yeah.
and upholding those rather than like, hey, if you don't make your bed, it means that you're a slob. To me, like I like things neat and orderly. And if I like them neat and orderly, I want them to be neat and orderly everywhere I go. Does that mean that I'm going to have to obsessively match and fold every pair of socks perfectly? No. I think there's a balance point where you understand, like, are you getting a return on your investment?
Mm-hmm.
No. Okay. Don't do it there. Right. But it's
Right.
about the standard and being, obsessive about you upholding that core value that matters to you. And that's, again, very specific to you or your family. And I think the cool part there is, like you showed, what you do, what you model becomes normal for your kids. And I can think of so many awesome examples. One I will share personally because, just to brag for a second, I love this one. When we go to the supermarket, usually it's me, my two kids who are 12 and 9. We will park the car not near the front because I would rather walk than get my car dinged by a little kid. Anyway,
Right.
usually park in the back of the parking lot. And when we walk to the store, we will always grab whatever carts we see and push them back to the store. It happens every single time we go. It is not a reflex. I don't have to ask my kids, just what we do. And I love that part because it's become normal. Is it our responsibility to put them away? No. But would I be pissed if a cart flew across the lot and bashed in the side of my car? Yeah, I'd be pissed. Why didn't someone put it away? It's the simplest thing, but like that little bit of extra effort, like you said, cleaning up the bathroom. Is it your responsibility? Not really, right? You're not being paid to be a janitor, but do you care enough about the world that you live in to leave it better than you found it? Could you do a little bit extra, right? To be the example of like, oh, hey, that dude did it. Maybe I can too. Because if we don't step up, right, and use the opportunity we have to show other people what it looks like to be a successful father, husband, person, whatever, all of those things at the same time, right? How do they understand it? How do they see it's possible? How do they know it's achievable unless we actually live those things out loud? And I think that takes a lot of courage, right? So honor to you for being willing to walk that out and to be here to share that stuff vulnerably and transparently. I think that's amazing. And I'm super happy that you are doing it. And I think that more people need to be able to do that, but it takes us being willing to do it first for them to understand, hey, it's okay to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I'm wired to share anything, no matter what. People are like, whoa, slow down. But I am really driven by I wish I would have had this knowledge earlier. Like that's the thing in me. Like, everything that I do for business is to try and speed people up through the pain I went through. Right. That's the way I'm solving problems in my mind. I wish I would, I take rogue carts back too. I always feel silly. I'm like sitting there pushing a cart the wrong way, but I wish I would have done that with my boys early on. Right. And so what am I going to do? Like you just did, share the story, because maybe someone else will grab that and be like, oh, and it's not about showing other people how great you are. I'm pushing this cart back, I'm doing good for the world. It's about that practice. And I'm trying to think of a really easy example. Let's say you desire to be clean shaven. I'm obviously not. I like to have a beard, but let's say that's kind of your standard of what looks good. If you don't shave every day, but you would prefer to be shaved every day and clean shaven, you could easily go out on a date or show up somewhere with a scruffy face because you're not doing it the way that you should do it every day. If that's your standard, that's how you, so it's easy to slip, I think is what I'm trying to say. It's really when you don't approach everything with that mindset, and you're going to slip, it's okay, but you're actually setting yourself up for slipping more often. And so for me, I have read the Bible. I track it every single day for 7 years now. I missed one day, but I didn't miss a day. It was a time zone change in travel. In the app, I use an app, and it said I missed it. And I started to realize, like, why do I care about that? Why am I tracking this? Maybe I'll just skip a day to it doesn't seem legalistic or just like habit. And I really was thinking about that. I can't do that because this is a part of my life, and it's an incredibly important part of my life. And so that's, you can see it as a hustle or as a system. I'm doing this just because I'm doing it, and I'm always doing it. And that's what excellence looks like. It really comes down to what the heart is. And I've struggled. I've kind of gone back and forth because I build systems. That's what I do for a living. That's what I do in my life. I mean, I literally have a clothing guide depending on the weather when I go out in my ruck in the morning. Like, what do I wear? I don't want to mess around when I get out there. I know what the temperature is. I know what I'm going to wear. But I did challenge myself on this. Why am I doing these things? What is the reason I'm doing these things? And I think everybody should do that. But when you do this, how you do that one thing is how you do everything. It starts to not program you, but train you to just operate in excellence and operate in a way that is seen by the rest of the world as good and as example mostly. Not I'm better than you, or I'm doing this to lift myself up and puff my chest out, but I'm doing this hopefully to be an example to anybody who's wanting to watch.
Yeah. I think that the intentionality behind that is really important because it's not prideful. It's not, hey, look at me, look at the good that I'm doing, but it's rather, hey, look at what's possible. I look at what's possible if you're willing to go do the uncomfortable thing. Are you willing to look awkward for a couple seconds? Are you willing to go do the thing you'd rather not do? Right? Yeah. To go on a ruck or to push the cart back, or even when you're done with it, putting it back in the thing yourself after you've used it. Like these little examples of, are you willing to do that little bit extra where yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, you have time constraints. Yes, you have other stuff to do. But are you willing to do that little bit extra? I think is that really important muscle to train, because that to me is the thing that will show up in other places rather unexpectedly. When it comes down to your business and you have to take care of that customer, are you willing to do that little bit extra?
Yeah.
When it comes down to, hey, your health and your fitness, are you willing to go for the walk or the ruck when it's thunder and lightning outside because you said you would? Or do you make the excuse? Do you say, oh no, it's okay? That slippery slope of like, I'm just going to give myself an out because reasons X, Y, and Z. And I think like that personal excellence that you talked about there is that thing that you need to uphold the standard of. That is what's going to carry you forward. And it's, again, that contract between you and you. Like if you skip a day, who's really going to know? You would.
Yeah.
But that matters to you.
I have had a lot of, this is something I've thought a lot about. My friend, really good friend, Matt Chenard, he got kind of Insta famous for doing these ice baths, before they were even popular. And he lives in Alberta, and he literally has a like trough or a tub, right? And he would go out and he'd start filming himself. He was very uncomfortable filming himself. And he would use an axe to break the ice. I mean, sometimes this thick, and he'd get in, it was -20 outside, air temperature, whatever. And he would talk through and talk about principles and things. And he and I, he's an incredible coach. He coaches men on, identity and who they are and the things that, a lot of men struggle with, especially entrepreneurs, through time, because we place that identity in what we're producing rather than who we are, whose we are. And he's just done this for years and years and years. And he talks a lot about that discipline and that doing those things. And I challenged him, a couple months back, and he's like, I looked at his content, and his content had already started to change. Like, just because you're doing it doesn't mean you're doing it for the right reason. Just because I did an ice bath every morning doesn't mean you need to be doing an ice bath every morning. Like, what are your intentions? And I think that you bring up a really good point, is that we really should always be checking why we're doing what we're doing. Why am I pushing this cart back? Is it so these people see me and say, "Oh, thank you for doing a good job"? Or, I actually, when I'm like, where are the employees? Why aren't they doing what they're supposed to be doing? That's my brain, right? I'm like, this guy's sitting over here on his phone. But I think it can wire you in two different ways. It can become so automatic that you are numb to why you're doing things. And I think that's the challenge I would have. And so for me, I will be very disciplined in something, but I will change how I do it to get out of a rut. So I'll change my workout structures, or tell my coach I want a completely different style of working out because I'm in a rut. I'm just doing it. Or I'll change when I do my prayer walk, those types of things. That is to challenge myself. Am I doing this for the right reason, or am I just in automatic mode? And I think that's something that we all should always ask ourselves all the time, because I don't think God wants us to pray just to pray and have a check mark. And that kind of goes back to what we first started about, like using Christianity kind of as a way to attract other people. I'm going to talk about being a Christian because I'm going to attract other people. So always questioning why you're doing what you're doing. Don't ever get in a rut deep enough that you can't figure your way out of it or understand what the true reason for it is.
I love that. God, I want to thank you. This has been an amazing conversation, and man, just incredible honor to you for continuing to live this version of you out as authentically as possible, because I will tell you, it is an inspiration to me, and I'm sure there are plenty of people listening who find that as well. So again, just tremendous honor to you to continue to live that out. I know it's not easy day to day, but it is worth it.
Thank you, Jim. Really appreciate you having me on.
My pleasure. Any parting words or things we should cover before we go, or ways people can support you maybe?
I think you've kind of found the place where I live, which is Facebook. Depending on how my life is, depending on what I'm sharing, I'm pretty much an open book. So if you want to know who I am, that's it. I even kind of get criticized for sharing too much, but that's the life. I think the pursuit of doing things for the right reason is the main thing here, and that the order of that you live your life. That's what I would really challenge listeners to ask really deeply and put it somewhere where you see it every day. To challenge yourself. I have a little checklist every morning, and I change that frequently too. But one of the things that I've built into my life is the first thing in my day is the most important thing in my day. So before I do anything else other than take a drink of water and bio break, is I read the Bible. And so for that, I do that intentionally because I want to start my day the way that my life is in order. And it's a reminder from the very start that my relationship with God is more important than everything else. However, those other things are, I'm not devaluing the relationship I have with my wife, but I also know my pursuit of God will encourage my pursuit of my wife. And my pursuit of my wife will encourage a strong relationship and a loving relationship, being married 30 years this coming July. I would encourage the listeners to really question what order you have your life, what you're actually living, and what's actually in your heart.
Oh, that's a good word. Go ahead. Thank you again.
Thanks, Jim.